was cracking up during Nancy's talk, and I went to her and I told her, I said, you used like entire lines from my speech, like not just you know, gave a nuance of it. It was like entire sentences that I've written. You said them. I was like, this is funny. And I started thinking, like, God, did I hear you correctly? They're already hearing it from her. Why do they have to hear it from me? But then I was like, well, usually when he has something to say, my husband calls that surround sound. When you hear it from 2 or 3 different places, that means that he has something that is so important for you to hear, and he wants you to get it. And so it's easy to sit here and think, well, that person over there has a call and they don't need to believe the lies anymore. But I'm telling you, it is for you. It's for me. It's for each of us individually. There's a reason why you're here. And so anyway, I won't get into all of that yet, but I just want to say, I wanted to come down here because I feel like this is so much more intimate down here. That I felt like if I was up there, I would be forever away. So they said, don't get off the wood. So now I'm nervous. Like, I hope I don't step off the wood. You know how did y'all see the movie Field of Dreams? And that guy, like if he stepped across, he would become a different person. And so I'm going to try not to step across the wood. But I have a hard time standing still. I am so thrilled. I had something planned for this morning, and I told Debbie about it. And when Lisa called me and asked me to speak, I was like, oh, I can't because I got this other thing planned. But then as I started thinking about it, I was like, I don't have to be at that. I've trained people to do it. I don't have to be at everything that Save One does. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to say yes. And I'm going to walk away from that and let them do it. And so I have a training going on right now at Save One, and I'm not there. And I love it. I'm so happy. I like doing that. Of course, it's what I do for my job. But you know, I wanted to be here because she's asked me to come to these before, and I've never gotten to come except for the one at Save One at the office. And so anyway, it is my honor, and I'm not just saying this because I'm up here and Lisa's my friend. It is my honor to be a part of this because early on, 3 years ago, a mutual friend, Vanessa, got us hooked up and said, y'all need to know each other. And so we had breakfast. And she started telling me her vision and her dream for this ministry. And so I've gotten to see it unfold over these years. And one thing that I am so appreciative about Lisa is not once has it been about her. It has always been about getting women to know Jesus deeper. And I love that. I can get behind that all day long, forever and ever and ever. So I have the incredible privilege to serve on the board with Lisa and several other women, and so I'm just thrilled to be here. So I say all that to say I'm just happy, and thank you for inviting me to come. But let's get to these sheets, okay? Now, those were some pretty dang personal questions that y'all just answered, and I want you to know they are completely confidential. I don't want any of you, I did not want any of you to put your name on these. They're just a moment for you to be honest and for us to see with each other who is struggling with what. Have they all been passed out, the new ones? You've all been passed out. Everybody has one of these sheets. You don't know who filled it out. You don't know who in the room has got your sheet. So none of that matters, okay? But we're going to go through each question. I'm going to ask each question. And if you have the why circled on your sheet, I want you to stand up, okay? So you guys ready? So the first question, have you ever used laxatives in an attempt to lose weight? Stand up. If you have a why circled on your sheet, okay? Okay? And as I start to answer or ask the next question, you can sit down, okay? So you're going to be standing up and sitting down a bunch. Have you ever turned to food for comfort? Wow. Okay, as you can sit down. Have you ever been diagnosed with an eating disorder? Wow. Have you ever abused working out, like working out excessively, or been addicted to working out? Okay. Have you ever been physically abused? Wow. God, it just brings tears to my eyes. Have you ever been sexually abused? Wow. Look at this room. How many of us have been sexually abused? Have you ever been verbally abused? Wow. Have you ever been, you can sit down and then stand up at the next one. Have you ever been emotionally abused? Wow. Okay. Have you ever been sexually assaulted by an acquaintance? That's a lot of baggage. Okay. Have you ever been sexually assaulted by someone whom you did not know? Have you ever had sex outside marriage? Wow. Have you ever participated in sexting or any form of cyber sex? 3 of us. Wow. Have you gone further with a guy than you wanted to or crossed some type of physical boundary? Wow. Have you ever struggled with pornography or erotic literature? We don't talk about this enough, do we? Okay. Have you ever experienced divorce in your family? Do you come from a single parent home? Have any of your direct family members been diagnosed with a mental illness? Wow. Do you currently have a prodigal child? Wow. Do you currently have secrets that you feel you cannot tell anyone? Wow. It's a whole room of sisters here. We've got to trust each other. Have you ever used drugs? Do you use tobacco products? Do you drink alcohol to excess regularly? Do you drink alcohol as a response to stress? Have you ever been addicted to drugs? Have you ever been addicted to alcohol? Have you ever been addicted to pornography? We like to think that that's just men dealing with that. Have you ever experienced ongoing anxiety? Wow. Wow. Have you ever thought about suicide? Golly, this gets me. I didn't know I would be so emotional seeing this. Have you ever intentionally hurt yourself, like through cutting or burning or anything like that? Have you ever seen a professional counselor? Nothing wrong with that. Has the fear of stigma ever prevented you from seeking professional counseling? Wow. Have you ever had an abortion? Have you ever had sexual thoughts about another woman? Thank you guys for being honest about these questions. Have you ever looked down on someone because of their struggles? Wow. Have you ever lied about any of these issues for fear of being judged? We got to trust each other. And then, have you ever felt like God could not love you or forgive you? Wow. That's a lot. That's a lot to take in. I am so thankful that you guys were honest on that sheet. You saw that you're not the only one. There's so many times the enemy gets into our hearts and into our minds and makes us think that nobody has ever dealt with the things that I'm dealing with. And even in this group, can you imagine how prevalent this is in churches of hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people? That's the baggage we're carrying into our lives and into our communities. How many times do we go through these things and a label gets stamped on us? Just like what Nancy was talking about, it's like early on you get this label stamped on you and you start seeing yourself through the filter of that label. Like the label gets put on you, and you know how like when you put a picture on Instagram and you can pick which filter you want, and you can't see the original anymore because the filter is laid over it. That's what we do with our identity. We get that label stamped on us, and we start believing that that label is true, and it becomes this filter. And so then we start seeing our lives through the filter instead of our God-given identity, and we move further and further and further away from it, and we start making decisions based on this false identity, and we start moving forward in our lives thinking that we're this person, and God is saying, no, you were way over here. This is where I started you. But label after label after label after lie after lie after lie got filtered through, and I have no idea anymore what the God-given identity looks like, because there's been so many layers on top of it. And that's how we move forward with our lives so many times, because we have this label. And so we start thinking, that's who I am. You know, she had an abortion. She's been diagnosed bipolar. She takes medicine. This is label. You know, she got raped when she was little. That's why she has issues now. It's like label, judge you. We've got to be a sisterhood, especially in the family of believers, that offers this safe place for us to come and be open and honest and transparent. That's one of the things I love about Redeem Her Now, because she is providing the open, transparent way in which we can come forward and trust each other with this stuff. It's easy to stand up for your sister when it's anonymous. But how about when you come forward and you say, you know what, that was my problem, and I need to lay it down at the altar today. That's a different story. But we've got to get to that point. We can no longer go forward and think that we're being all that we can be for God and being all that we're supposed to be to our children and in our marriages and in our communities and our jobs, if we're carrying all these labels and filters around and making decisions through this false identity. Our identity gets misidentified. And we go forward thinking those things that are so wrong. And the enemy sees us. He sees us. And when we start making decisions based on this false identity, and we start moving forward, and we're just messing up our lives and moving ourselves further and further away from the God-given identity, he's like kicked back, smoking a cigar with his feet up on the desk. And, you know, he don't have to do any work because we're doing it all for him. But then the moment you start taking what Nancy said and applying it to your life, it's like he's sitting up at the desk. Now he's stamping out his cigar. And he's like, wait, what? She got the truth? It's the truth that abolishes the lie. But we can't apply the truth until we find the lie. But sometimes that lie has become so ingrained in our thinking, it's like, this is who I am. I'm that lady. When I first started Save One, those of you who don't know about Save One, it's an abortion recovery ministry, because I had an abortion when I was 19 years old. And I believed the lie, every single lie that the enemy told me. That God would never accept me back, that I wasn't worth anything now, that I could never be used for anything other than just relationship after relationship with men. And I ended up attempting suicide. It was a horrible existence because I believed all the lies. But when we start doing that, it's like this thinking just becomes ingrained in us, and we can't see anything else because we're not allowing for the truth to come in. I can go up to Lisa and say, Lisa, I have a truth for you. And I can say, the sky is blue. And it's not going to make any difference in her life because she's not believing a lie about the sky. She knows the sky is blue. So we can read the Bible all day long, and unless we find the lie and the truth that is applied to it, then it's just going to, the word is important, and absolutely it can change your life, but you've got to dig down to find the lie and find what God says about that lie, and then shred it with the truth of God's word. Because nothing will change until Jesus gets in and fixes those parts of our hearts and our minds. And we don't hand down this misidentified identity to the next generation and see them play out. Because this is what we've told our kids that we are. We have to get ourselves fixed first and then help the next generation because it's important. People are watching you, whether you know it or not. They're watching you. We are raising another generation behind us. So I want to just tell you real quickly a story from the Bible. And can I just back up for a minute and say the church with a capital C? I love the local church, but sometimes we exacerbate the problem. Because you see all of these, just in this group, all of the people who are dealing with heavy things or have dealt with them in their life. And so if we're not talking about these hard, tough subjects in the church, then what is that telling the person who's starting to retreat and isolate themselves because they come to church and they see everybody's all dressed up and nice and pretty, which is fine. But at the same time, we're not talking about those hard problems. And so they start believing that, well, the church can't help me. And I certainly can't tell anybody at the church that I was diagnosed with an eating disorder or that I had an abortion. I can't tell them because evidently nobody else there has ever dealt with that. I have literally had pastors tell me, pastors of churches that have hundreds of members, even thousands, you're probably not going to find anybody here who's ever had an abortion. And I'm like, really, you think? The statistics are 1 out of every 3 women of childbearing age has had an abortion. I think there were 5 who stood up in the audience, and including me, the 6 just in this room, who were honest. So we can't just walk around thinking that we can't talk about this in the church, because we have to. Because when we don't, people start isolating and retreating, and they don't turn to the very thing who can totally change their life. We can't withhold the very thing they need, which is Jesus Christ. They have to. We have to turn with these hard subjects and start talking about them in the church, because the church is the first place people should turn to for help, not the last. And I was going to say a few minutes ago, when I first started Save One, it was at Cornerstone Church. And nobody knew my name, but they would just say, that's the abortion lady. If any kind of law came up, anything, they would be like, oh, well, go ask that abortion lady. And at first it was like, oh, really? Like they're calling me the abortion lady? Like, and I would even have people walk up and say, hey, you're that abortion lady. I have a question for you, and at first it was like, I was just like becoming really public about my abortion. And I'm like, I don't want to be known as the abortion lady. It's like, oh, the label, the stamp. But then I started counseling myself off the ledge, and I thought, okay, well, at least they've got somewhere to turn. And if I don't know the answer, I can find the answer. At least we're starting to talk about abortion in the church. And Pastor Maury was happy to talk about a controversial subject. I know it's so unlike him, but he was happy to have this now at the church. And we started having incredible success with it. And now we're like in 25 different countries, and we have over 300 chapters, and it's amazing. And please come and see me at the table. I can tell you all about it. I wrote my whole story in a book called Survivor. I have a few of those copies out there. But I tell you all that to say, not all labels are bad. That felt bad. But then after I started reframing it, I was like, okay, well, it's not totally bad. I'm going to be public about my abortion. So, people are coming to me about abortion. And so now I don't care what they call me. I'm not going to shut up. I'm not going to stop. We're not going to retreat. I don't care if somebody tells a lie about me or talks about me bad in the wherever out there in the community, or I get scary stuff in the mail. None of that is going to matter, because we've been called to a thing and we're going to do it. But sometimes we get messed up. And there's a story in the Bible that I want to tell you. I want to show you so you know what I'm talking about. It's all the way back in Genesis. And I'm not going to read all of it to you because it's long, and I want you to go home and study it for yourself. But I want to start in Genesis 14. Abraham is talking to the Lord. And his name was Abram at the time, but later his name changed to Abraham. And it's a long story, but it's the same guy. And we're just going to call him Abraham. And so Abraham is talking to the Lord. And he is talking about how he doesn't have a son. And when you go back and you look in chapter 13 and chapter 12 and chapter 11, it's like all about Abraham and the Lord talking to each other. And several times through those chapters, the Lord mentions your descendants. So it's like he's saying it over and over. Well, your ancestors this, and your descendants this, and but Abraham didn't have any kids. But you can see how God was planting the seed in his mind, giving him a promise every time he said, your descendants this, your descendants that. Well, in chapter 14, we find Abraham is talking to the Lord, and he's like, Lord, I don't have a son, so this guy that is with me is going to inherit all my stuff. And I don't want him to inherit all of my stuff. I want to have my own son. And so the Lord said, walk outside and look at the stars. That is how far your family's going to go. You can't even count the stars. That's how many ancestors and descendants. Thank you, editor. She's my editor, literally. That's how many descendants you're going to have. And so he's like, okay. So he goes back in. And so then Sarah, his wife, enters. And Sarah has been labeled barren. It's like that. Oh, that label, barren. And back then, to not have children was so shameful and horrible. It was like that label had been stamped on her, and all she could see about herself was, I am barren. I have not given my husband a son. And that's all he wants is a son. But you can't tell me. It doesn't say that Sarah was privy to all the promises, but I know just in my own marriage that if God says something profound to my husband, he comes and tells me. And he's like, so both of us can believe and pray into the promise. And so you can't tell me that Sarah was not privy to this promise. Time after time after time, the Lord had told Abraham, you will have a descendant. He talked about it several times and then even gave him that promise. Look at the stars. They were in a tent. So it's not like they had some big house that Sarah was over in the other side and didn't see or know. They're in a tent. And so Sarah gets she's there. And she starts thinking and making decisions, emotional decisions, through the filter of the label. She starts thinking, I'm barren. God must need some help for me to get a son. I need to take the reins and start making decisions to help God along because he must not realize my label. and my misidentification. And so many of you know the story, she gets her servant to go sleep with her husband, and she gets pregnant and has a child. I mean, like, it's easy to look at Sarah and go, that's ridiculous. Like, I can't even imagine. Like, honey, will you go sleep with so-and-so over here so we can have some kids? Can you imagine that? But Abraham was like, okay, I'll go if I must, you know. So you can imagine at this point in the story, the whole thing just goes south. Every bad trait you've ever seen in women came out. The hatred, the competition, the deceiving, the comparison, the conniving. I mean, like, between these two women, it came out, and we're still suffering today from that one choice that Sarah made. And so that is what we do a lot of times. We take the reins of our life, and we're like, God, I know better, because you don't know who I really am. I'm this label. And if you really loved me, I wouldn't have this label. So I must need to do this on my own. And it's easy to look down our nose at Sarah, but how many times do we do that? When I was pregnant at 19, God was trying to bless me with a daughter. And I took the reins of my life. And I thought, no, I know better. He doesn't know that I'm 19 and in college, and I don't want to marry this guy. So I had an abortion, thinking I was fixing the problem myself. And that was not at all what happened. I'm still suffering consequences today from 1985. Nobody tells you that part when you start thinking through the label, and you start thinking through the filter, and you start making these decisions out of emotions instead of on who God created you to be. And so you do all of this, and your self-esteem goes in the toilet, because esteem should never be based on self. When we base our esteem on ourselves, that is a constantly moving target. It's like, I can gain 10 pounds and I hate myself for a week. Lisa Wharton knows. She's gone through my up and down weight struggles with me. I'm like, I'm constantly like up and down. Or she'll call and say, can we go out to eat? What kind of diet are you on? Are you off sugar this week, or what are you doing? And so it's like, if my esteem was based on myself, it would be up and down, constantly. But if we base our esteem on the God-given identity that He has given me, that is a never-moving target. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He is non-moving. What He said at the beginning, it still stands. Who He says you are is what stands. It is an immovable anchor that can hold us through everything in our lives, through any label, through any deception, through anything. That is the never-moving target. I hate the term self-esteem. And we've all heard it. We've all referred to ourselves about it. I've said that. And we've heard the labels about other people, like she has a father wound, so, her self-esteem is really bad. Label. But we have to remove self-esteem and replace it with God-esteem. In counseling all the time, we talk about, I help people understand how you can put off the old things and put on the new things. But you have to do it. It's not just going to magically descend upon you. You have to purposely say, I'm taking off the old and I'm going to put on the new. So I'm taking off what I have been taught, this humanistic way of thinking that all women have been told, that I need to think highly of myself and base my self-esteem on how I feel about myself, and replace it with, what does God say I am? And put on that new person. So if you ever hear anybody use that term again of self-esteem, throw that in the trash and then put on your God esteem. The next time you get labeled with something, think, does that line up with God esteem, or is that going to mess with my self-esteem? Esteem can never be based on self. That is such a paltry, limited way of thinking. And we don't have to think that way. We have an unending supply of esteem from God that needs to be put on us. It is that tangible thing that you can do to walk out of here today thinking differently, changing your attitudes, changing your thinking. And so I've gotten way ahead of my notes here. Who has their Bible? You can turn to same scripture that Nancy used, Ephesians 4:22 through 24. This is what I'm talking about here. When you're taking off your old way of thinking and you're going to put on your new way of thinking. Ephesians 4:22 through 24, and I'm reading it out of the New Living Translation. It says, throw off your old sinful nature and your former way of life. How cool is that? It's exactly what we're talking about. Throw off that old identification, that old label that you've been stamped with from that mean stepmother you had as a child. Oh, that was just me. Did I say that out loud? And put on this new label that God says you are, that we're going to find out in just a minute. That old former way of life, which is corrupted by lust and deception. It is corrupted by lies. It's that lie again that we're believing about ourselves. Instead, let the Spirit renew your thoughts and attitudes. Put on your new nature, created to be like God, truly righteous and holy. That's who we can be. And so you may say, well, what is this new nature? What is this new God esteem that I'm supposed to put on? We'll go back a couple of chapters to Ephesians 2:10. Again, I'm reading from the New Living. It says, for we are God's masterpiece. He has created us anew in Christ Jesus so we can do the good things He planned for us long ago. If God says, I am a masterpiece, if God says, you are a masterpiece, Alice, then any thought that comes into your mind that does not line up with masterpiece is a lie. So when you take on this new label, bam, stamp yourself with that. I'm a masterpiece. And so you may be thinking all of a sudden, well, but I'm this. I'm too fat. People won't look at me. I'm too skinny. People will think I'm sick. I'm too old. Time has passed by. I'm too young. People won't take me seriously. Like you start thinking of all the labels, all the lies, but no, you're a masterpiece. My advice to you is to fix your temple the best you can possibly fix it. If there's something wrong, work to fix it. Make your temple the best that it possibly can. And then if you can't, then this is the masterpiece God was talking about, and walk in confidence in that. Because it says right there, He created you as a masterpiece, but so you can go do the things He planned for us long ago. I have been saying over and over again that I feel like our country is about to enter into a great awakening. I don't want revival. I want an awakening. I want to see that we have heard about, like people shutting down their businesses so they can go pray in midday, like the great revivals from the past did. We are ripe for it. And if we are ripe for it, who do you think God is depending on to bring it to our communities? It's us. It's not her. It's not her. It's me. It's you. It's you. It's you, Sam. We have to do it. We are on this earth at this time. It's not somebody else's responsibility. It's our responsibility. But if I'm making decisions based on a lie, how is that going to help anybody? If I'm believing that God can't use me, how is that gonna bring a great awakening to my family? How is that gonna bring a great awakening to my job site? How am I going to do whatever it is that God has called us to do? And I'm just going to tell you, it'll be hard. Because if he called us to do easy things, why would we need him? It's in our weakness that he is made strong. So I want you guys to get sick and tired of avoiding things because you're afraid that people will see your perceived weakness. Walk in that weakness. Like, just walk in it, because that's when God shines, is in our weakness. I remember when I first started Save One, I had never even thought, like it had never even been a thought in my mind that I would publicly speak, ever, anywhere. I was fine holding my little classes in the confidential room where nobody heard us and nobody knew us, we were there. And then another lady that was involved with us at the time said, I got you a speaking engagement for a youth group. I can still see the church to this day, in Castilian Springs. And I was like, wait, what? And she goes, no, you're going to go speak. I got you booked. I was like, and she just turned and started walking down at the main campus through the multi-purpose room. And I was following after her. And I was like, no, wait, what? I'm not going to speak. I'm not a speaker. I was saying this to her back. And I remember, I'm like, I'm not. And she turned around and she goes, like over her shoulder, and she's real country. She goes, you got the Holy Ghost. And just kept on walking. And I was like, well, that's right. Yeah. But, I wasn't ready for that label. I didn't want to. And in all honesty, I've never told this in public. And if my husband was here, he'd be like, no, don't tell it. But I'm going to tell it because it's just us here, right? And 3,000 people on Facebook Live. So as I was driving to this speaking engagement, first time ever in my life, I was hoping I would have a car wreck. That's how much I did not want to speak in public. And I thought, ending up in the hospital would be better than having to go speak to a youth group of kids. So don't tell me that God calls you to do easy things. He doesn't. But you just have to keep walking. I'm sure that night was terrible. I still don't even know what I said. All I was like was, I got 20 minutes and I get back in my car and this will be over, So don't ever think that he's going to call you to something easy. I'm just being honest. But when he calls you to that hard thing, you want all the encumbrances off of you. There is a reason why you're here today. There is a reason why you're hearing this same message twice. It's surround sound. Anytime he repeats things in the Bible, it's like he wants us to get it. And I want you guys to get this. It is so important. We are here at this time on our earth, in this country, in this community, to make a difference. And if you stay at home with your children, it could be that he is positioning you to pour into them exactly what they need. So you're not handing down some misidentification. So don't be thinking, I can't change the world. I just stay home with my kids. No, that is the greatest job anybody could have, to pour into the next generation. So whatever it is that you do, see yourself, put off that old self-esteem, put on the new God-esteem. John 8:32 says, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free, like what we were talking about. For us to be set free by truth, that means we have to know the lie. We have to dig down deep, because so many times that has been ingrained in our thinking, and we have to dig and find it, because truth can't set us free until we find what has kept us in bondage. And so dig down. Don't be settled today. There may not be a lie that you're believing, and that's fantastic. Pray for everybody else here. But if you feel any nudging in any direction at all that you think, you know what? I remember that business that God wanted me to start, but I didn't believe I could do it. I wasn't smart enough. That's a label. If He's calling you to it, He is the one who will carry you through it. You'll make mistakes, and I've made so many mistakes at Save One, but He fixes it. I learn from it, and I move on, and I don't label myself with failure just because I made a mistake. It's a learning opportunity. Reframe those moments in your mind and think about the fact that God did not change what He said about you. Just because you failed, just because you sinned, just because whatever it is that we did, He didn't mess up. He still says you're a masterpiece, created to do His work. We are the masters of our minds. We have to check the thoughts at the door and question those things that don't line up with masterpiece. Question that stuff. God's not going to overstep your boundary. If you allow this junk into your mind, He's, what can He do? But if you start leaning on Him and say, you know what, God, I need to renew my mind through you. Jesus, I need your word to help me make these thoughts line up with masterpiece. Then He's all over it. Open that boundary and let Him in to work on your mind. This can end for you today. And Lydia, if you want to go back up, you can walk out of here with a new truth, because we must think that anytime we come together under the banner of Jesus Christ, which is what we're doing at Redeem Her Now at this Thrive event, there's never a time that we come together in His name that we should not expect change to occur. You're here for a reason. It's not just to get a box checked. It's not just to show up to help Lisa put on her event. There's a reason you're here. This isn't a message that's just for this person over here. It's for every single one of us. The fact that we had almost the same, like so many of the same things, lets me know that this is a problem in this room. And you saw, some of you are still shocked beyond belief that people stood when so many of your problems were called. Those are labels that need to be shredded with truth. And that can happen today. It is time. And I want you guys to get sick and tired of the enemy holding you over here and you doing the work for him. It's time to put off that old and put on the new and suit up and get battle ready for what's ahead. Because everything out there is not going to just fix itself. It's going to get worse. We have to be ready. We have to be ready. And the way to do that is to come down here, agree in prayer. Lisa's going to bring her prayer team up here. Me and Nancy will be up here. We'll put on masks. We'll do everything you want us to do. But now is the time to come down here, agree in prayer. You don't have to confess whatever it is that God has shown you today. All you have to do is say, you know what, that act of coming forward just kicks the enemy in the teeth. And it shows him, I'm not gonna take this anymore. I'm sick and tired of this. I'm sick and tired of believing this about myself because it doesn't line up with masterpiece. And so whoever you are today, which with all the sisters who were standing, there's many of us believing lies or have dealt with this stuff in our life. So whoever you want to come up here and pray, if you would, come up and we're going to pray together. We're going to do whatever it takes. We'll talk with you. Redeem Her Now is here for you to sign up and help and do whatever. So if we could dim the lights a little bit and just have some time in prayer and together. Okay? Thank you, guys.